Hello everybody, thank you so much for joining us for once again this very special edition of the Unmasked series. The Unmasked series have been designed to build civic competence to open up the eyes of the world into the reality of how best we must respond to this COVID-19 pandemic. With this particular platform, we should be able to interrogate the key things that should be able to shape how the nation has to perceive this particular COVID-19 response. And joining me today is a distinguished scholar who has written widely on issues concerning the public response, especially this pandemic. And he has authored a very interesting piece called The Lawyer's Creed, which is a very in-depth analysis of the best perspective that especially the lawyers have to appreciate and interpret and even interrogate when they're dealing with this specific response. That is Mr. Albert Collins Cheyune. Thank you very much for joining me.
Welcome.
Yeah. And tonight we are going to have a very interesting conversation on especially the role of the legal profession in this time of the pandemic, but also to appreciate aspects of constitutional rule in this period of the pandemic. Now, an interesting scholar called William McO'Neill, in his seminal piece called The Inevitability of Instability, noted that constitutionalism is the reverence to the rules of the game and the respect of the rule of law and the laws that take on a nation. And he goes ahead to say that where the state fails to respect the rule of law, then the countrymen are left with no option but to oppose. Now we find ourselves in this pandemic where we are locked down. We seem to be having a massive violation of the rule of law, constitutionalism. What is your take on that?
Well, thank you, Simon. First of all, I appreciate this opportunity to offer my interpretation, most in the arena of constitutionalism. In the first place, I would like to demystify issues to do with the presidential powers and the electives that have continuously been passed, of course in these several intervals. I would think that the president will be speaking 1 or 2 days, and people are waiting. But what is important is people to appreciate the presidential directives. And this emanates from the Constitution, and a couple of the provisions of the Constitution need to be put at play. Now, our Constitution, under Articles 108, Articles 99, Articles 98, vests the powers of the President in the person of the President to be the head of cabinet, but also the head of government. Thus, those powers vest in the president certain obligations. The first obligation is to protect the Constitution, but also the laws that are passed by Parliament. But another important aspect which is related to COVID situation is to protect the welfare of the citizens, but also the integrity of a country. Now, in doing so, that obligation reduces the person of the president into an initiator and also a goal setter. An initiator means that the president initiates enactment of laws. That's why you see laws coming from cabinet and then they are tabled before Parliament on different issues. But also in goal setting, the powers of the president are whatever the president says becomes policy. And as we appreciate, policy is the background upon which laws are made. But we shouldn't forget that we are living under a presidential system of governance. The presidential system of government does not vest legislative powers in the person of the president. For there to be legislative powers in the person of the president, there must be an appropriate and specific law. We don't have that appropriate and specific law in Uganda for that purpose. So whatever the president says in form of directives or statements or what is merely policy. So it does not have a force of law. Meaning that the enforcement of the directives of the president without giving them necessary force of law in form of enactment is in violation. I just want to remind you that in about 2013, there was an attempt to table before Parliament a respective law in the name of Presidential Directives Act. But the efforts were not materialized. I think it was. I tried to write it in my book under chapter 2, and details are there. Now, someone will ask that, what next? How can we achieve the legitimacy of the directives of the president? There are options here. One of the options then we had is for the president to declare a state of emergency.
Which was not done.
Which was not done. Of course, that is justified under our constitution, Articles 110 and Articles 46. That was not done, but still it was justifiable. But it was a long way. I would agree with Professor Ben Shokoro that that is the last thing government would opt for, because it has got consequences. But the government did not opt for that, but opted for proceeding under we call the Emergency Protection Act, the Emergency Powers Act. Section 3 of the Emergency Protection Act, Powers Act, gives the minister, in this case the line minister, Minister of Health, to pass enactments which provide for the safety of the public. Whatever it passes leads to providing for measures to protect public safety, and that could be justified in that way. The Emergency Powers Act also is given another force by the Public Health Act. Now, substantially, what is happening, government use the Public Health Act. There's a couple of sections that give powers to the minister to pass such instruments. Sections 19, sections 27, section 36. If you can have a look at the Public Health Act, can provide for that. Now, someone would ask, in this case, why didn't government declare a state of emergency? That is a big question. Government could not declare, first of all, the state of emergency because it paints a bad picture on government. It's actually portrays that it's a failing government. It's a failing government. Yes, we faced with the pandemic, but I would think that there was still the ability to manage it, provided appropriate steps could be taken. Now, another interesting aspect here comes in, most especially in 2020, and some aspects now in this second wave, where the president speaks in the night, and then in the morning you see our forces enforcing these directives. That is illegal. It's not in order, because the president's directives do not have force of law, meaning that to be enforced, they have to wait for the force of the law. Now,
just on that very point, then what can the public do? Because we seem, I don't want us to get stuck so much in the legalese, but also offer really clear direction to the public. In a situation whereby the president speaks like he's going to speak on Saturday, then the following day they are beating up people like we saw in 2020, where they are, inhumanely implementing the laws. What then can the public do?
Now, the two things, I think it starts with government. Government employs professional people in terms of forces. Those forces need to be trained and oriented at most of these systems. Of course, remembering that there shouldn't be a delay. I appreciate the fact that there is a process to enact that instrument, which process may not wait for implementation. But this, when the forces are implementing, they have to consider the circumstances. I think in all ways use of force is not good.
But you see, what then do you say? What then do you say about what Dr. Diana Twine, the Permanent Secretary, said in an interview with the Daily Monitor? She said that the reason as to why there has been massive delay from the response of the government is actually because of the extensive or the elongated procedure burden that we have under the procurement laws and all these things. But also government made a promise to the nation that They learnt lessons from the first lockdown. And ahead of the next lockdown, they had prepared sufficiently. So how then do you justify that, given that you're saying that, we have all these professionals, they should have acted in time, and then what we have is actually inaction, even when they had substantive time, so to say?
Yeah, we have a comprehensive government. And even just picking from your statement, procurement, emergency. Of course, even in laws of procurement, there are emergency situations where you can procure without flouting the procedures. I think this is not the first thing government has faced that requires emergency procurement. But also, when you look at the past experience, we went through the first wave. I do not expect mistakes to be repeated in the second phase. I mean, there's a lot. We have standing procurement units, units and departments within institutions, most especially the institution of health. We have even support institutions. I don't expect that these mistakes would have been repeated. But also, it's also important what triggers the citizens to react in their way. Are they provoked in this way? Because you see, it's respect. The government is doing a noble job to protect. But you're protecting someone who is hungry. Someone doesn't have something to eat. I mean, and I mean they don't have an option. They don't have information. You've not sensitized them. I mean, on how they can go about that. What do you expect from them? Of course, what you expect is them to react.
So you are saying that the lockdown is a provocation to the Ugandan citizens?
No, approach.
The approach of managing the lockdown.
Managing the lockdown is very important.
Yes.
Government should have come up with a comprehensive mechanism. Of course, that would have started with educating the masses. Immediately after the president speaks, educating the masses, and of course telling them that we are one. We have to, as much as government has got an obligation, but also citizens have got an obligation.
Now you see, you as a law has been used. Many of the professionals that you've talked about in government have advocated for the use of preventive as opposed to the curative system of dealing with the COVID-19. Now the preventive obviously means that you must sensitize the public. But the language that is used in sensitization, the language of war, that we are in a war, and given the background that we are dealing with sort of like a military state, the language of war sort of imposes unjustified means, and the lockdown can be used as a tool of militarization. What is your view on that?
Yeah, the lockdown can be used as a military rule, but it also depends on the personalities of the forces. I just want to commend the few reactions I've received, most especially in the second lockdown, where at least the LCs, the authorities down there at the villages have been involved. Someone wants to go to hospital, but the LC knows, and the LC letter is respected, because you don't expect someone to run to the RDC. That is another way. You know what brings in militarization? Militarization means that you perform orders as they are given, without looking at the rationale. That's what it means. But I think it is very important for the forces to be triggered into appreciating that there is a rationale. Not all situations are the same. But also, who is enforcing? It is important. Because personnel, the police and then the army. The police is supposed to be civic, and the police is taken through a special training to deal with citizens. Now when you bring in the army, then it becomes another, because the army, as we know, the nature of training they undertake is to put...
Yeah, but you see, even just beyond thinking about militarization from the angle of who is enforcing it, in Uganda today, we have the militarization of a police force. I'm sure you've seen incidents where you have the RCC of Kampala, the RCC of I think Nakawa, who recently shut down I think Forest Mall and all these places, Game, I'm sure Pride, saying that under their orders. We have seen the RCC of Kampala championing actually the cause of battering citizens so that they can realize the objective of the lockdowns. Doesn't that actually further demonstrate to you that the lockdown is a tool of militarizing and terrorizing the citizens of this nation?
What I appreciate about the military serving in technical positions, I would think that RCC position is more than a political job.
Yeah.
It's a technical person. Now, what it speaks to us is that some of those positions need technical personnel. Yes, could be trained with military because it has that good, militarization brings in that good background of enforcement. But you know, when you entrust someone who's non-technical, I mean, someone who's lacks certain training, and exactly that's what you come from. That's what. And remember, you're enforcing against people of all circles.
Yeah.
Eh? Enforcing against people of all circles. And you know, an incident which has happened in Katanga, it shouldn't be an incident that happens in other places, with due respect.
Yeah.
Because remember, the other person, they eat whatever they work for that day. So if they prevent it to work, then they are going to see that prevention in form of violation on their rights.
What you're saying actually goes to demonstrate to us that beyond even militarization, the lockdown has been used as a violation, as a tool of violating fundamental human rights.
The lockdown may not have been used as a tool to violate people's rights, but the means of implementing the orders or what came out of the lockdown is what could be termed as violation. In the first place, have you provided people with alternatives? Medical alternatives? How do they access medical centers, for example? And that calls for means of transport. If you prevent someone from accessing medical attention, that is certainly violation. If you prevent someone from accessing a place where they can get food, that's another what? Violation.
Yeah.
But also, this thing needed to consult experts, because there are quite activities that may not have been closed, surely speaking, because you know what is happening when you prevent someone from using a formal way, then they opt for an informal way. It could actually be encouraging. If you prevent someone from walking in the night, then the rules means to walk in what? In the night, which would be actually more dangerous. You would agree with me that crime in terms of theft, which is unreported, is on the rise. And yet there is curfew. Doesn't that explain that people are using the informal way to make life, to make ends of life?
So with the presence of a lockdown, people then become even much more ingenious.
Yes.
And creative in execution of crime. So the lockdown just advances.
Absolutely. For me, what I think is presidential directives in any name they can be made are not enough. It's not about the president announcing directives, but it is about hearing his voice. This voice that should caution the forces not to act in the way that is inhuman.
But you see, in the first lockdown, the president came out, very clear incident, and he called out the LDUs to stop what they are doing. He said, protect my people. What much more then could there be? Because then don't we keep on allowing a lockdown to extend with the hope that the president will call out his people, but actually they just keep on contravening that very voice? Yes,
I agree with you that happens, but also we continue receiving such cases of violation, beating up people, and you know what what brought that is when the hands of the lawyers were tied.
Yes.
You know, those people, there will always be those to violate. But if they are not brought to book, then what happens that is it perpetrates in the way. So when you tie the hands of the lawyers, in this case, lawyers should have done a lot. Done a lot in sensitizing people. I mean, in some of these laws, people would want to know, are the directives in order? Are they legal? What should we do? And even those who have violated their rights, can they be brought to book? Because you know, a lawyer acts for government and also acts for the people. I mean, even those who are violated have got rights. So they have to be violated. They have to be protected. So if you tie the hands of that person, then what do you expect? Then that means that someone would lose interest. Because even when someone's rights are violated and, well, they don't have anywhere they trust to go, they will not even register a case at police. Because why would I register a case at a police where there is another police officer who has violated? Meaning that it is a wastage of time. So people are going to resort to alternative ways.
Now, in a situation where you have a systematic failure even of the legal system, because we don't have very many lawyers. There are the ratio of the lawyers and the population is extremely minimal. Number two, even if somebody went to the police to actually report a case, the justice system therein is extremely problematic. That some of these cases are not followed up to their logical conclusion. What else? What much more really can the lawyers do to ensure that people realize their rights in the time when there is a lockdown?
There's what we call civic education. And by the way, this goes beyond the lawyers. But also, you know, in the enforcement of rights and freedoms, it's not only government with obligation to execute, but even the citizens have got an obligation to execute. And if the citizen understands what they're supposed to do, then it becomes easier.
Now, just on that point, one of the citizens' duty is enjoined in Article 3 of the Constitution.
Yes.
And one of those duties is to resist anyone who violates the Constitution. From where we are progressed from up to where we are, we see that there is massive violation. Do you think now is the time for the people to stand up and actually use their right under Article 3 of the Constitution to resist?
You know, resistance in this era should be properly interpreted.
Yes.
Resistance is not picking up arms and fighting. I mean, boxing a police officer who has come to enforce, even if that police officer has done that illegally, but there are mechanisms.
Yes.
You know, where do you take someone? That's where people need to know, where do you report this police officer in case they have violated your rights. I don't know how many people know where the police standard unit is located.
That's if they know whether it even exists.
Yeah, if they know this exists. I don't know whether people know the powers of the DPC on the police officers. I don't know whether people know the powers of the RDC in case the RDC in this case was to help. I don't know whether the powers the people know. I mean, the powers of their community police.
Yes.
Police has come up with the Department of Community Policing. Of course, that liaises with the citizens to see what is happening. So I think it's much to do with information. Is information. Right now, I would expect lawyers to do a lot of writing. Writing, and this should be sensible writing, educative writing to the masses. It could be extended in form of publication, but also being so much involved in legal journalism is what we call legal journalism. Yes. A lot of information needs to be what? But also, I would have expected a lot of involvement of the Attorney General. You know, the Attorney General is the head of the bar.
Yes.
The Attorney General in the first place is expected to fight for the lawyers, platform for the lawyers. I actually got perplexed a bit and disappointed when the then Attorney General did not do anything when the lawyers were fighting for the essentiality platform. I mean, I did not get on any opinion made by the Attorney General interpreting the essentiality aspect of lawyers, which of course which was at large. Lawyers needed to be given freedom. Of course, amidst the threats, because they are also humans and they are also susceptible to attract the disease. I mean, but of course, the enforcement of rights continues, and it can be done in so many ways. Does not mean to go to court. I would think that if they were given a good platform, they would have extended a lot of information that would have helped to prevent the situation.
Now, we find ourselves in a situation where lawyers are just actually being used as rubber stamps of illegal execution of the governmental mandate. You've talked about, and again, I want us to go back to our duty in Article 3 of our resistance. And aren't the lawyers actually simply perpetuating and causing more challenge when they become rubber stamps of something illegal, like a lockdown?
Yeah, that is true, but that should not that should not discourage the noble lawyers.
Yes.
Why I'm calling them noble? Because this is a noble profession. Our profession is not about survival for the fittest, although it has been made so.
Yeah.
It's not about survival for the fittest. What is supposed to be done is you work, you do what is noble and legal, and then you wait for the pay. I would say that is very disappointing for someone to have selfish or egocentric interests.
Yeah.
And when they harbor those egocentric interests, that's when they rubber stamp. They see the truth, but they don't talk about the truth.
Is it because of the fear or ignorance?
It's a game of survival for the fittest. Someone thinks that if I brand myself as anti-government, telling the truth is in between being anti-government and telling the truth.
So it's no longer between what is right and wrong,
yes,
but who you're pleasing, the powers
who you're
that be.
pleasing.
Yes.
And that's where that is where the problem is. Yeah, but it is important that we do the right thing. When good men do nothing about something, then evil triumphs.
Yes.
Yes, evil triumphs. So as a lawyer, we need always to be reminded that we are noble. We're noble. This is a noble job or profession. We are called to execute, and we shouldn't execute it based on our personal interests, but should be public at large. So the question we should keep asking ourselves is, how does the public benefit? In this case, how does the public benefit? If you actually have a concerted effort and we have one voice, I assure you lots of things will be put off the table.
And what are the lawyers doing to achieve that one voice? Because in a time like this, we need one voice to amplify that actually we have something against the population which is curtailing their rights, which is curtailing their liberties. What are the lawyers doing to achieve that unity of voice?
I would answer, what should the lawyers do?
So you're saying
what should
actually
be done?
they haven't yet done it.
I have not seen that a lot, right?
Yeah.
We have different organizations or societies, the prime being the Uganda Law Society.
Yes.
I would expect a lot should have come from there, not because a program needs to be run to see that the society is being run. I don't know whether you understand me. It's not doing something to justify that there's something going on.
Sort of like a reactionary thing.
Yes, but there must be a purpose. Actions to be purposed. What do we achieve? It's not a moment of advocacy to give space to law society, that law society is working. But how does the other person down there, the person down there, the helpless person, benefit in this?
You see, we find ourselves in a situation where the law society has been reduced into a mere paper tiger. There is nothing much more than, issuing statements after an incident has happened. Are you as the lawyers then derailing off that course of achieving your fundamental legal duty and reducing yourselves into mere paper tigers in a situation like this? Why don't you call out the president when such illegality is happening?
That is exactly what I'm talking about. One, I should have expected, some of the expectations I had is law society to approach the office of the Attorney General. The Attorney General is the lead or chief government advisor.
Yes.
And I said before that I never got across, and I've never got across any advice as far as lockdown is concerned, coming from the office of the Attorney General, and specifically on the issue of essentiality of lawyers.
Yes.
I may be mistaken, but at least the information I have researched in my road to publish different articles and books, I have not come across that. Now, what should have happened is the Law Society or other related societies to approach the office of the Attorney General to provide legal memorandums and push for their implementation. And some of this implementation is to give a platform to lawyers, not only to run to court, because to run to court may be late, but also to put in place mechanisms that that can enable to prevent violation of rights
now you
of
see,
people.
What Mr. Chene, you're saying that we seem to keep seeing it only one lens, that lawyers, the prime mandate and realization of the legal duty can best be executed in court. But then you don't seem to speak to one issue whereby you have lawyers who are key players in civic action, civic activism. What then should their place be? Because yes, most of the question of essentiality has been limited to only open us up so that we can go to court, as opposed to open us up so that even we can get to mobilize the masses, we can get to educate the masses to realize their duties.
Simon, just like I said, prevention is better. And going to court is the last thing if prevention has refused.
Yes.
A lawyer's job makes more meaning when it provides avenues to prevent. Provide means which are peaceful. I would call court to be high-handed. And you know, that also brings costs. You know, but this noble job of a lawyer should start with providing knowledge, but also participating. The last thing they should think about is going to court. And in this point in time, is not necessary, because even the judges are at risk. Because the disease is also affecting them. They are at risk. But I'm talking about that they can do that may not necessarily involve court.
So I wanted us to break it down for our viewers. Some of this, one of the things you've said, there is publishing, which you've done. You've talked about legal journalism, like I think what is happening here,
legal
where
journalism
the masses. You've talked about court as one of those other things that they can protect the human rights. What much more beyond those three?
Of course, as you know, lawyers do what we call pro bono.
Pro bono services.
Pro bono. Pro bono does not mean that you go and represent someone in court. You know, we come from different places, villages, cities. What has a lawyer done at that level? What has working to an authority and offering my advice is one of the things that lawyers need to opt for. It may look minute, but it changes. It sets a precedent. It sets an opinion that this is how some things are supposed to be done. Because much of what is perpetrating violations of human rights starts small, starts at the village. And then when it is embraced, then someone said, well, we did this, then we can do it the other way. So I think the information the lawyer provides, first the authorities, second to the affected, is very, very important.
What happens in a situation whereby you have lawyers who would love to issue, you know, information to educate the masses, but there is a tendency for even the lawyers to only want to be driving the government narrative, as opposed to giving genuine, that may be seemingly critical, but actually achieves the nobility of the legal profession.
As lawyers, we have to train ourselves to be balanced in approaches. Because today you may work for government, tomorrow you may work for the masses. As you know, someone will be a prosecutor tomorrow, gets into legal practice, and that is it. That is a journey. So meaning that the nobility, calling our profession a noble job, a noble profession, calls for being balanced in approach, in providing knowledge, in action, in providing advice. You know, the law is the law, and the mechanism is a mechanism, and every mechanism is based under the law. So what lawyers need to do is to give it a right approach, give something a right approach, even if it is against government. But anyway, that is it. That is the right interpretation. But when you disguise the approach, then you neither help the masses or government.
And I think that's what's really happening right now, where we're having many of them disguising their advice and wanting to sound politically correct. So I want us to tackle that area of the lawyers trying to be politically correct in the lockdown. Because the lockdown seems to be historically from the time when it was declared. It was declared in the time when we were going in for the general elections in 2020.
That is true.
In December, between the 18th and I think the subsequent days, I think between the 18th and the 20th, where we saw the massive riots in Kampala and the weaponization of the lockdown against the citizens. So you find that the lawyers themselves were terrorized. So as such, their reaction is that they must be politically correct. How then do the lawyers deal with a situation whereby they have to come out as balanced, but then they want to sound politically correct in such a situation?
Now, you know, that is a tricky approach where the lawyers have not created that confidence. I think now is the time for us to create think tanks. Think tanks in our societies which are formidable, which are respectable, which government can approach and say, yes, we have confidence in this society. This society has oftentimes provided credible advice, not imbalanced advice. Let us seek opinion. That is the route that the lawyers need to build.
Are you saying we don't have any of those in Uganda right now?
I don't think that government could have such confidence, concrete confidence, to say that before we implement, let us seek advice from law society.
It hasn't been their practice to seek for advice, maybe?
Yes, it is us to build. It is us to build the think tank.
But you see,
that confidence in
I
government.
thought that with the you know, the likes of initiatives such as the Uganda Law Society, which is created by law, we have the Uganda Christian Lawyers Fraternity. We have a couple of pockets of legal arrangements or organizations here and there. Are you saying none of those is credible enough to offer the current government
we have
advice?
We have credibility. We have best brains. The knowledge is there. But what about the confidence?
Let me ask you a question, Mr. Cheyune. You are a lecturer at the Law Development Center, which is an academic institution.
Yes.
How come the government is not confident enough even to call upon the distinguished academicians such as yourself to come and give them advice on a situation such as the lockdown?
The confidence. It goes back to the confidence.
They are afraid that you will threaten their existence?
No, you see, when you look at our approach, and I'm part of it, when you look at our approach, we look at the society as having that mandate to fight for the lawyers. Although in fighting for the lawyers we also bring out something to do with the indigents.
Yes.
But you know, this is against government.
You're saying that the indigents fighting for them is against the government?
Yes. You know, the statements, if you consistently look at the statements the law society has been giving.
Yes.
They've been, government, here you are wrong. Government, which in most instances is right. You are wrong, you were supposed to do this. Right? And it stops there. But you know, if you've created confidence, even before you speak, you are consulted. I think what is missing is for us to create that credibility.
Let me just pose a specific question to you, because you work with the Law Development Center. You are a lecturer with the Law Development Center. What has LDC done in terms of guiding the government as an academic institution on the course on the course they are taking, especially in regards to the lockdown? What has it done?
First, I would say it straight. I'll answer that straight because one, it's not one of his mandates. When you look at the LDC Act, it's not one of the mandates. The prime mandate of LDC is to train. And I think it has executed that. Government, LDC is government. and its objectives are clearly stipulated in its act. So I would think that a government institution which is also subject to the advice of the Attorney General would be overstepping.
It's mandate to
come in and advise government if government has not consulted.
Then what happens to unique situations such as COVID-19? And I mean, I want to appreciate the mind of this is their mandate, this is all they're supposed to do, which is training the lawyers. But should we then simply sit back and say, even in your individual capacities, there is nothing much more you can do?
Yes. Now, what I wanted to bring on board here is now it goes back to the personalities, individual persons, lecturers. What have they done? Because on top of teaching at LDC, they boast with a lot of knowledge and experience.
Yes.
And this is exactly what I talked about. These initiatives that can come out through awareness. Awareness could be awareness public, where you come up and work with civil organizations, provide knowledge and sensitization, the programs of a kind, writing. Of course, as you know, you government, you can't be anti-government at the same time. You can't be a government at the same time when you're working with government. When actually our boss in terms of advice is the Attorney General. For me, what I think is the office of the Attorney General needs to do a lot. It needs to be a lot to equip, because when you look at the institution of LDC, as you said, which collects wide brains and experience, could be one of the units government can call upon, but through the office of the Attorney General to advise. But also, you also need to appreciate that the office of Attorney General is well equipped.
Yes, it is well equipped, but
it's well equipped.
But over time, we have seen it as a history of being politicized.
We have colleagues working in the Attorney General's chambers at the same time teaching at LDC. So advice in that way is also offered.
How about
our colleagues?
Why isn't there a deliberate initiative to prompt the office of the Attorney General that, look here, hey, we're in a situation whereby it's a pandemic, and we are available? Isn't there, what happens to individual responsibility of you, the lawyers, prompting the Attorney General to say that, look here, we are available to advise the government?
Actually, we are available. Why I'm here,
it's to declare your availability.
No. What I'm doing demonstrates that I'm ready. I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be here if I was not ready to do that. And actually, I'm offering advice. I mean, but this is my private and individual capacity, not representing LDC.
So is this a call to your colleagues who are teaching at the center to actually speak out on some of these, the violations, the challenges we are facing during the lockdown?
Yes, I think the balanced approach of speaking about on what is happening and the right way to go is through publication. Yes, through publication.
Now, I want us to wrap up this conversation with just two questions. Number one, the role of the lawyers in the academia like yourself. Let's first leave the fact that you are, you work with a government institution. The collapse, for example, of the Amin dictatorship was championed especially by the Makerere University, the Makerere University academic dons, so to say, who inspired information and ideology to awaken the masses. Your role as lawyers in the academia, has it been fully satisfied in the time of the lockdown?
Yes. Well, without intervening in the, what I'm not supposed to say, but I would say as a person who teaches at LDC has come up with different programs, even to its lecturers, professional advisors, directors arranged a couple of sessions for us touching COVID-19, but also the inspiration that the institution gives. Being in government, I don't think that will be in order for the director to mobilize or encourage the lecturers that go and offer advice, but the inspiration and the motivation through what he does in organizing for us these Zoom sessions, and of course it has not been given any opportunity to plan.
Because of the...
If institutions we are told that between this time this is going to happen, if institutions we are told that, you know, if this number of lecturers and students are vaccinated, then you can do this under this, you know, but that's not coming out.
Now, that being said, just one question to you. You are a Christian lawyer. You are part of the Uganda Christian Lawyers Fraternity. I want us just to tackle the role of a Christian lawyer in a time such as this. Because let's leave the knowledge we have, the secular knowledge, so to say, we have acquired. How then does a Christian lawyer, what is the expectation of a Christian lawyer in terms of responding to this lockdown?
A lot. It's very good that you brought out that. When the other lockdown, the first lockdown was jetting in, I started an initiative of writing on a daily basis what I call KSC notes. I share them all over, and this is basically, I try to interpret and teach people the Bible in reality. I pick up lessons. I've actually covered a number of books in the Bible, and I'm planning on publishing that. And actually there is a way. A lot can be done by Christian lawyers. Some of the feedback I've got is that people have resorted to preparing themselves.
For what exactly?
For after the lockdown. People think they are energized. Actually, I've opened people's eyes. They are saying that, oh, you mean you cannot start before you plan? I've actually telling them that use this time to plan.
Now let's just go maybe a little, and I'm sure you've talked about the Bible. The Bible is a prophetic book.
Yes.
Because it declares the mind of God. We find ourselves in a time where we have prophetic voices which have risen up in this country, and they have said, look here, the path that we are taking as a nation does not seem to be the right path. Or it's not doesn't, but it's not the right path. And we find ourselves in a situation whereby many of the lawyers are still asleep even when there is a prophetic voice. What should be the role of a Christian lawyer in responding to a prophetic voice? Because this is what happened in the time of Esther. She understood that. David understood that.
I think we need the voice of this person who is trained with the skill to analyze. You know, even the interpretations can get you off the point. The type of interpretation you get can get you off point. And you start taking it that direction and you get lost. But if we get proper analysis, and proper analysis leads to proper lessons, then I think we can ably manage the different prophecies or the interpretation.
What happens when it's really written in black and white, just like God says, I've put before you life and death, and he says choose life? He doesn't really need you to probably interpret that. What happens when you have a clear prophetic voice which has put it in black and white that look here, this path is not right? Then how does a Christian lawyer have to respond to that?
Let's pray.
Okay.
I pray every day.
Then beyond the prayer, how do you action on that prophecy?
You know, prayer and action are inseparable. We pray and act. When you pray and act like David did, David did not do anything before he prayed, but he acted. You know, it's action. What have you done? I want to challenge lawyers, and I know there are good ones there. There are those who have responded. It starts from our what have you done for your church? We no longer have church services.
Exactly that.
What are you doing?
What are the lawyers doing to push for the opening up of the churches?
What the lawyers can do to see the churches open is a double jeopardy.
Okay.
And it's a practical thing. So the lawyers need to be part of what is going on, to advise government that there's something that we can do, right? There's something that we can do to manage. Because as lawyers, we shouldn't encroach ourselves only in law.
Yes.
But also we also need to think about the well-being. You know, church, Christianity, religion is one of the strong pillars for building the well-being of a citizen.
Yes.
So when you close it out, then there's what you breed, which you may not manage. There's a scorpion that you may build, a dangerous scorpion that you may build.
So you think,
I think lawyers can do something to persuade government that once we get a comprehensive mechanism, churches can operate. How does it sound that all religious sects are closed? Surely. It has set a very bad precedent.
For this nation, to have religious...
Not only for this nation,
for the entire world.
World at large.
To have the body of Christ closed.
God was put at a standstill. I actually remember the days of Ahab. Ahab, when he prevented people from worshipping and told them that don't worship from here, go. Those are some of the things that I remember.
And we all know the end of Ahab.
Yes, and we know the end of Ahab.
And do you think that could be the end?
And Jezebel.
If you continue that path?
Surely that will not be a good path to think about.
I just want us to give, I want you to give us the parting shots, and I really want to appreciate you for being a part of this conversation. Do you think, just simple questions, do you think this lockdown should end?
I think the lockdown should end, and this is my justification. We are about 3 days to the end of the 42 days.
Yes.
What has been done?
It is not clear.
No, I mean, I expected a lot to be done within the 42 days. Other than staying at home and being prevented from moving, what has government done? Is it vaccination?
No.
Have you seen increasing rates of vaccination?
People are locked down so they can't even move for vaccination.
Yes, people are keeping home.
Is there any final message you would love to tell the president? I want you to face this camera, and you get to tell him to open up the nation. You get to tell him the necessity of us going back to our places of worship as a nation. You know, the camera is there. Please have your final parting shot to the nation, to the president.
Okay, my final bit would be we need a comprehensive framework. What I think is a comprehensive framework should be put in place. I would think that social distancing as one of the strong pillars of fighting, preventive pillars of fighting against COVID-19 would be one of the ways. Closing up churches completely may not be the solution. You know, when people are built socially, even the legal enforcement, economic, technological, environmental also becomes easier. I think those are some of the mechanisms that government can do. But you know, closing out the voices of the masses is going to actually lose and also reduce the lifespan. If someone loses hope, then they are likely to even die faster out of a simple disease or ailment.
Yep.
I thank you.
Thank you very much. And that has been Mr. Albert Collins Kyeyune joining us. Mr. Kyeyune, thank you so much for joining us, and the good Lord bless you all. And obviously the message is so clear that has come from here. The lawyers have a duty to do. You as a citizen, you have a role to do in this particular time. But above all, this is the time that we need to think about opening up the economy. We end the lockdown. We open up the places of worship. As Mr. Kyeyune said, this is a very fundamental thing in the realization of the perfect society that Uganda desires to have. God bless you all.